responsibility as a member of the Senate or the House of Commons debate or vote on a question that would place him or her in a conflict of interest. Mr. Speaker, I know I'm out of time. I will finish after the voting. Thank you very much.
After the proceedings, of course, the honourable member have a minute and a half, and of course, questions and comments when that time comes. Just a reminder to all members to try to keep the noise in the chamber down a little bit so we can get the SO31s complete. Statements by members. Déclaration de député. The honourable member for Nepean.
Mr. Speaker, June 23rd is the National Day of Remembrance for Victims of Terrorism. 39 years back, on this day, Air India Flight 182 was blown up mid-air from a bomb planted by Canadian Khalistani extremists. It killed all 329 passengers and crew members, and this is the largest mass killing in Canadian history. Unfortunately, many Canadians are not aware that even today, the ideology responsible for this terrorist attack is still alive among few people in Canada. Recent celebration of assassination of Hindu Indian Prime Minister Indira Gandhi by Khalistan supporters, glorifying violence and hate, shows that the dark forces have been energized again and point to a dreadful times ahead. Hindu Canadians are rightfully concerned. I stand in solidarity with the families of the victims of Air India bombing. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member from Edmonton Manning.
Mr. Speaker, 82 years ago, the Toronto Maple Leafs rallied from a 3-0 series deficit to win the Stanley Cup final. No team since has managed to do that in a final series. Our hopes and dreams as a nation now rest with the Edmonton Oilers in their quest to bring the cup home where it belongs. It has been 31 years since the Canadian team won the cup. They were down 3-1 game, but we believe Saturday night's 8-1 victory showed us that we are right to believe. The Oilers, like its fans, never give up. The team is battling back. Game 5 is tonight. As a nation, let us rally behind Canada's team, the Edmonton Oilers. The Stanley Cup is belong here. Let's bring it home.
Let's bring it home. The honourable member from Aurora Oak Ridges, Richmond Hill.
Thank you. Mr. Speaker, this past weekend, I marched the York Pride Parade alongside York Pride, PFLAG, and the York Region Liberals, and thousands of others who joined in unity to celebrate and support the 2S LGBTQI+ community. This past weekend also marked the beginning of Eid al-Adha, or the Feast of Sacrifice, one of the most important celebrations in the Muslim community, observed by many in my riding. In the past, I've also joined with them. When communities gather to celebrate, we all can observe or participate to learn more. With understanding and familiarity, we're able to accept and appreciate the unique and diverse neighbours we all have here in Canada. These occasions remind us to stand against discrimination and assure that everyone, regardless of their sexual orientation, gender identity, religion, or culture, feel valued and safe. As we approach Canada Day, let's all do our part to ensure we are inclusive and proudly united as we work together to build an even better Canada. Happy Pride, Eid Mubarak, and Happy Canada Day. Yeah. Thank you.
Great.
The honourable member for Berthier-Masquinongé. The people from the Maison des Cageurs de Lanoraie are on the Hill today. True walking encyclopedias of the era of the voyageurs, Isabelle Rigoux and Alexandre Pampalon know how to immerse their visitors in the impressive universe of these men who feared nothing. To the tune of stories by Jules Verne, Charles Dickens, Joseph Charles Taché, and many others, visitors can imagine floating on these inhospitable waters on these huge rafts made of wood. Thanks to Isabelle and Alexandre, many actors of these stories will soon be designated as heritage characters of our history. It'll be the case for Joe Montferrand, known for his size and his footprints on the ceiling, and for Honoré Beaugrand, the author of the legendary Chasse-Galerie, which has been recounted in many versions. Bravo to the Maison des Cageurs. Your rigor and your perseverance ensure the sustainability of our collective memory. Thank you.
The honourable member from Winnipeg South Centre.
Mr. Speaker, recently we celebrated Asian Heritage Month, a time when we honour the historic and profound contributions of Asian Canadians that have shaped our nation. Growing up, I was fortunate to have a true Canadian hero, Art Miki, as my next-door neighbour. In 1988, Art successfully lobbied and worked alongside Prime Minister Brian Mulroney to have Canada officially apologize and compensate Japanese Canadians for the horrific treatment they were subjected to, including forced confinement to internment camps during the Second World War. Art Miki's contributions extend beyond this historical achievement, as he continues to educate through a new book that has captured important chapters of Canadian history. Art continues to advocate for a Canada that is more inclusive, equitable, and recognizing of our vast cultural mosaic. Mr. Speaker, individuals like Art Miki exemplify the best of Canada. Thank you, Art, for the personal impact you've had on shaping me as an individual and for your lasting contributions to our country. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Charlebourg, Haute-Saint-Charles. The Francophonie is at the heart of Canadian identity and represents a fundamental pillar of our history and culture. It's a source of pride for our country to have Francophones across the country contributing to the vitality and linguistic diversity of Canada. On June 24th, I'm very proud as a Quebecer to celebrate Quebec's national holidays, an emblematic day that brings together Quebecers and all those who hold the Francophonie dear. And how can we talk about the national holiday without mentioning Saint Jean-Baptiste? This celebration, which originated in popular tradition, has become a time of celebration throughout Quebec, but also in many Francophone communities from coast to coast to coast. Throughout the history of Canada, as a Quebecer, and as Quebecers, we have contributed to build a unique and prosperous country. Happy National Day. Happy Saint Jean-Baptiste.
Bonne fête nationale.
Happy National Day. The honourable member for Notre-Dame-de-Grâce, Westmount. Mr. Speaker, I'm very proud to recognize and celebrate the exceptional team captains who are visiting Ottawa today. These three national hockey teams brought home gold medals from the World Championships this year. Tyler McGregor.
Men's national para-hockey team led his squad to gold at the World Para-Hockey Championships. Porter Martone, who broke Canada's all-time tournament scoring record, was instrumental in the team gold medal at the U18 World Championship. And Marie-Philippe Poulin, captain clutch and three-time Olympic gold medalist, led the women's national team to their 13th gold medal at the Women's World Hockey Championship. Ces athlètes remarquables.
These remarkable athletes and their teammates have inspired players and fans across Canada this year, thanks to their performances on ice and their devotion to their communities off ice. We congratulate them all.
Let's get the question period
The honourable member from Sault Ste. Marie.
Speaker, it's National Indigenous Peoples Month, a time to recognize and honour the contributions of Indigenous peoples, their knowledge and wisdom, along with their continued commitment to protecting the land and the creation. This month, I want to recognize and thank the countless elders, knowledge keepers, and leaders from Batchewana, Garden River, Mishipacotton, Mississauga, Sagamok, Missinaibi Cree, Serpent River, Thessalon, and along with the Sault Ste. Marie historic Métis community. They work tirelessly to teach, guide, and pass down their sacred knowledge and their language. I also want to recognize the on and off reserve Indigenous peoples who inhabit Boating and the surrounding area. They're integral to the prosperity of Algoma, and their leadership is thanked in so many ways. So again, Speaker, I'm going to spend this month to continue to educate myself on how we can continue to walk the path of reconciliation together. Thank you very much. Happy National Indigenous Peoples Day. Chiwawitch.
The honourable member
It's
from
the month, I thought. Now he's saying it today.
After 9 years of this Prime Minister, the scandals are adding up and Canadians are paying the price. The Auditor General's damning revelations of the Liberals' Green Slush Fund underscores the depths of corruption happening under this Prime Minister. The Auditor General made it clear that the blame lies directly at the feet of this Industry Minister, who failed in his duty to protect taxpayers. Over $123 million in contracts were illicitly awarded. $76 million to Liberal insiders, including the Prime Minister's hand-picked chair of the Green Slush Fund, who siphoned off $217,000 to her own company. Conservatives demand accountability. We demand that every misspent dollar must be returned immediately. And thanks to Conservative action, the RCMP now has access to all relevant documents, allowing them to investigate and uncover the full extent of this rot. Mr. Speaker, the Liberals have lost the moral authority to govern, and common sense Conservatives are ready to clean house and end this Liberal corruption once and for all.
The Honourable Member from Ottawa West Nepean.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today to recognize a remarkable constituent of mine, Varavati Monahan. When she arrived in Canada 30 years ago, the first books that her husband Harry gave to her were the classic Anne of Green Gables series by L.M. Montgomery. She loved the books so much that she decided to translate them into Thai, her mother language. It took over a year to translate them, a true labor of love. It's a fitting tribute in a year that would have been L.M. Montgomery's 150th birthday. Ms. Monahan is looking forward to traveling to Cavendish PEI, which is the site that inspired the Anne of Green Gables series. These books will be presented to Thai and Canadian dignitaries as a symbol of the cultural bridge between our two countries. This is a testament to the universality and relevance of the stories of our iconic protagonist, Anne. Now, thanks to Varavati, another generation of children can enjoy these inspiring tales. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Some Conservative needs to take her right.
The Honourable Member from Bay of Quinte.
This Finance Minister's latest tax hike did a direct hit to the Canadians who were lucky enough after 9 years of Liberal government to find itself still in the middle class. Despite this government's attempts to start a class where the real Canadians who will be hit the most by this tax are the middle class, the union leader and the worker selling the home he inherited from his parents, the small business owner trying to retire by selling their business, our farmers selling the family farm to their children. These are the real victims of this Liberal government's cruel tax hike, which will rob the working class, middle class to pay for the obese government and its reckless spending. The capital gains, job-killing tax will make finding a family doctor even harder, raise food prices even higher, drive home starts even lower, and make starting a small business even pricier. Instead of the Liberal NDP tax hikes, we need common sense tax reforms. We'll make taxes lower, simpler, and fairer to bring home prosperity to all Canadians and all that live here.
The Honourable Member from Medicine Hat, Cardston Warner.
Mr. Speaker, after 9 years of this Prime Minister, his inflationary carbon tax is driving up the cost of everything, making life more expensive than ever before. The Parliamentary Budget Officer has already proven that the carbon tax, just like the Prime Minister, is not worth the cost. As a result of Conservative pressure, the Liberals were forced to finally reveal the true damage of the carbon tax that is causing the Canadian economy. That economic hit, adjusted for inflation, is $30 billion a year, or almost $2,000 per Canadian family. The government hid this number for years and even tried to silence the Parliamentary Budget Officer from exposing this information. The Prime Minister cannot be trusted to be honest with Canadians. Conservatives continue to call for the full release of all the data on how the carbon tax hurts Canadians. The NDP Liberal coalition must be transparent over the harm they are causing Canadians until common sense Conservatives can axe the tax.
The Honourable Member from Winnipeg South.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker. This past weekend marked the beginning of Eid al-Adha. During Eid, families come together to pray, share meals, and distribute food to those in need, stressing the importance of unity, charity, and sacrifice. It is a time to deepen bonds with family and friends, to show kindness to others, and to reflect on the blessings of life. As Eid passes this year, let us recognize the contributions of the Muslim community to our society and reaffirm our commitment to promoting diversity, understanding, and respect for all faiths. And Mr. Speaker, let us acknowledge the challenging times faced by many in our communities. As politicians, we must do more to combat all forms of racism, including Islamophobia, while ensuring all have access to proper mental health supports as we feel the devastating impacts of conflict and loss of innocent lives throughout the world. Mr. Speaker, may Eid usher in a year of joy, peace, and understanding. Eid Mubarak.
The honourable member from Nunavut.
For Indigenous peoples to celebrate Indigenous Peoples History Month and the upcoming Indigenous Peoples Day, a lot of hurdles must be dismantled. The decades of underinvestments to ensure Indigenous peoples can thrive persist. While Conservatives made cuts, Liberals tout increases but do not come close to closing the gaps. Just these last weeks, we heard racist attitudes freely expressed without repercussions. Indeed, racist attitudes are protected in this House. When this happens, it is Indigenous peoples that suffer the consequences. It is Indigenous peoples that will remain overrepresented in the justice system and who will have less access to health care. It is Indigenous children who will keep going to school having slept in substandard, overcrowded housing conditions. I take this time to remind Indigenous peoples to voice and stand for your rights. Show your strength by speaking your cultures and your languages. Take this time to celebrate your strength.
The Honourable Member for Drummond. Quebec has just lost one of its most brilliant directors, Éric Canuel, who lost his battle with cancer at the age of 63. He began his career by directing ads and video clips for Sylvain Cossette, Sass Jordan, and Vilain Pingouin, but he quickly went on to become a reference in his field. He worked on the popular show Fortier, but he especially left his mark in the area of movies. There was La Loi du Cochon, Nez Rouge, Le Dernier Tunnel, Le Survenant, and his major success, Good Cop, Bad Cop, in 2007, for which he won the Genie for Best Film and the Jutrat Biel d'Or. At a time when Quebec cinema seemed to alternate between the dark and the fluffy, Éric Canuel knew how to create the perfect mix of genre with a great dose of suspense and action. Obviously, our condolences go to his family and dear ones. Thank you, Éric Canuel, for having proven that in cinema in Quebec, we could do everything and do it very well. Thank you.
All right, Pierre's in the House. Trudeau's in the House.
L'honorable député de Calgary Mid.
The Honourable Member for Calgary Midnapore.
NDP government is not worth the cost or the corruption. Thanks to the leader of the NDP, Canadians have been forced to endure one more year of this cover-up coalition avoiding accountability. From the $60 million Arrive scam app to the $200 million spent on McKinsey to the $1 billion Green Slush Fund, the NDP and their leader have been there to cover up for the Liberals at the expense of taxpayers. And now the NDP are putting forward motions at parliamentary committees.
Interrupt the honourable member. I'm going to ask the honourable member from Timmins James Bay, please, to not speak unless he's recognized. I'm going to ask the honourable member from order, please. Order. I'm going to ask the honourable member from Calgary Midnapore to start from the top. The honourable member.
This Liberal NDP government is not worth the cost or the corruption. Thanks to the leader of the NDP, Canadians have been forced to endure one more year of this cover-up coalition avoiding accountability. From the $60 million Arrive scam app to the $200 million spent on McKinsey to the $1 billion Green Slush Fund, the NDP and their leader have been there to cover up for the Liberals at the expense of taxpayers. And now the NDP are putting forward motions at parliamentary committees to block any attempts to uncover the truth in those scandals over the summer. How many more billions of taxpayer dollars need to disappear for the leader of the NDP to finally stand up to corruption, stand up to the Prime Minister, and say enough is enough? This summer, while they protect this Liberal Prime Minister, Conservatives will continue to fight not only for the truth, but for Canadians each and every day.
The honourable member from King's Hants.
Speaker, I rise to recognize the passing of John Murphy, the former Member of Parliament for King's Hants, who contributed a lifetime of work to advancing the public good. After obtaining his master's degree in social work, John became the director of the Fundy Mental Health Clinic and later a psychiatric social worker at the Valley Regional Hospital, while also teaching at Acadia University. Following his time in Parliament, John served as the chair of the National Council of Welfare, advocating for initiatives to reduce poverty. He was awarded the Sovereign's Medal for Volunteers and the Queen Elizabeth Diamond Jubilee Medal for his many contributions to community. He was a man of faith, and when I visited him in his final days, he was not afraid of death. He knew he had lived a good life worth living and was enjoying one of his favorite songs, the Irish tune, Danny Boy. I know I speak on behalf of all members of this House when we extend our condolences to his wife Julia, his children Pat and Kelly, and the entire family on John's passing. May he rest in peace, Mr. Speaker.
Questions orales. Oral questions.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Le ministre radical et libéral de la
Radical Liberal Environment Minister is threatening to impose an order in council which would put at risk thousands of jobs in the Quebec forestry sector. I would undo that radical order in council in order to protect those jobs. But until I can do so, there will be an increase in the cost of lumber and wood for home building. We will also see job losses. How many Quebecers will lose their jobs because of this radical Liberal order in council? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, for decades now, the federal government has had a responsibility to protect species at risk throughout the country. We need to protect species at risk. In this situation, the woodland caribou is impacted. When we protect species, we work with the provinces and territories and various orders of government. We're going to work with our partners to ensure that we protect both jobs and species at risk. I look forward to continuing to work with the Government of Quebec to protect both the environment and jobs. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition. Yes, but Quebecers can protect both of those because this matter falls under provincial jurisdiction, Mr. Speaker. The Bloc has maintained this radical Liberal government in power. They've kept them in power, and that's how the Prime Minister is able today to impose this order in council, which will kill a bunch of jobs. And the Minister said that the Bloc, and in fact it's been reported that the government might in fact get involved and interfere with this file. Why is the Prime Minister and his minister deciding to get involved and interfere with Quebec's jurisdiction to kill jobs in the forestry sector? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Well, Mr. Speaker, another day, more evidence that the Conservative Party simply does not understand that to build a strong future is to protect both the environment and the economy. We cannot build a strong economy without protecting the environment, and that is exactly what we are doing. On the other side of the House, though, they don't have the ability or the desire or a plan to protect the environment, to protect species at risk, or to protect the future of Canadian children. Mr. Speaker, we need a plan to protect the environment. That's what we're delivering on. But the Prime Minister's, the Conservatives don't even have a plan.
just common sense Conservatives who are saying that the Prime Minister's latest tax hike on small businesses, farmers, home builders, and healthcare is not worth the cost. Now, former Liberal Treasury Board President Scott Bryson says the Prime Minister's support for the tax hike is a combination of moral sanctimony and economic complacency from ministers who simply do what PMO tells them. He calls it socialist bafflegap. Why is the Prime Minister going ahead with killing jobs and raising costs with what his own Liberals call socialist bafflegap?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Speaker, despite the Conservative leader's partisan attacks, the raise on capital gains inclusion rates is very simple. If Canadians make more than $250,000 in profit from selling investments in a given year, we're asking them to share a little more of those profits with Canadians who need those investments, whether it's by investing in housing, whether it's standing up for school food programs, whether it's delivering dental care to seniors. These are investments we're making to support Canadians by asking the wealthiest to pay their fair share.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
It's not partisanship for me. It's his own former Liberal Treasury Board president who calls it socialist bafflegab. In fact, the tax begins applying on the very first dollar that a small business earns. And, you know, he's been promising that raising taxes would make life fair. We find out today from the Food Banks Association of Canada that now a record-smashing 25% of Canadians live in poverty after 9 years of his taxes, his deficits, and his doubling housing costs. Why is he going ahead with the same wackonomics that caused the poverty in order to solve it?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Speaker, the Leader of the Opposition talks about affordability, but he's standing against raising taxes on the wealthiest so we can give more supports to those who actually need it. He's standing against our school food program, which is going to help 400,000 kids across the country have fuller bellies as they study, and take the pressure off about $800 a year for families who are pressed with the cost of groceries. We're continuing to deliver dental care supports to seniors, and as of next week, to young people and Canadians with disabilities. We're there for Canadians. He's voting against it.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
It has been 9 years of this Prime Minister promising trickle-down economics, that if he just takes money away from small businesses and workers, it will go from one level of government to another level of government to another level of government. It will trickle down. And now 25% of Canadians are living in poverty, something he tried to cover up, just like he covered up his own data showing $25 billion of extra costs with the carbon tax, nearly $2,000 in carbon tax cover-up for every single family. How can we trust anything he says about taxes, poverty, or money?
Hear, hear.
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Speaker, the Leader of the Opposition hid for 8 weeks while he was trying to come up with an answer to us asking the wealthiest to pay their fair share so we could invest in fairness for every generation. I think he needs to go back to the drawing board because his answer is completely illogical and unfounded. The reality is, Mr. Speaker, when it comes to delivering for Canadians struggling with food prices, we've got a national school food program that's going to help 400,000 kids. That party is voting against, Mr. Speaker. They talk about affordability, but they're actually only interested in themselves and their political advantage.
He just literally described himself.
L'honorable député de Saint-Jean.
The Honourable Member for Saint-Jean. The Premier of British Columbia, David Eby, wrote to the Prime Minister to ask him to share more information and share information better about foreign interference with his province. Now, we know that with foreign interference, the Prime Minister isn't very proactive. He prefers to just close his eyes and wait for things to calm down. What we've seen is that foreign interference is not limited to the federal government. It can impact many orders of government. So why does the Prime Minister refuse to share critical information about foreign interference with premiers and provinces? The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Actually, a decent question.
On the contrary, Mr. Speaker, we are working with intelligence services and with CSIS to be able to share classified secret information with provincial premiers so that we can better work together on this very real matter, this problem, the problem of foreign interference. We have also created many mechanisms and institutions to counter foreign interference. More than any government before us, we will continue to be transparent and thorough in countering foreign interference. I thank the Bloc Québécois leader for proceeding to get security clearance, and we hope the Conservative leader will do the same. The Honourable Member for Saint-Jean. Well, The Prime Minister's dilly-dallying has had consequences. He refused to give information about the Winnipeg National Laboratory until ordered to do so. Also, there were problems with lack of collaboration with provinces when it comes to information sharing. The Prime Minister is as much part of the problem as he is part of the solution. He needs to step up. What is he waiting for to give Quebec and the provinces the information that he has? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, Bill C-70 that we just passed through the House with the support of the Bloc Québécois and that has been sent to the Senate for further study, well, Bill C-70 seeks to enhance information sharing with provincial and territorial premiers, information sharing when it comes to foreign interference or any national security threats. Through the bill, we would share information more often and more consistently. We are working respectfully and in cooperation in order to protect our democracy together as a team.
For 3 months, this Prime Minister has known about serious allegations that parliamentarians are knowingly working with foreign governments to undermine our country. Yet we don't know if he's had a single conversation with any member of his caucus. And the Conservative Party leader doesn't even want to know about serious allegations of foreign interference that directly impact their party. Why do both of these leaders put the interests of their party in front of our country?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Speaker, as all parliamentarians know,
the honourable member from Battle River Crowfoot knows indeed that he should not be speaking at the time. So I'm going to ask the honourable member, the Right Honourable Prime Minister, to start from the top, please.
Mr. Speaker, all parliamentarians in this House know how important it is to protect our democracy from foreign interference. That is why we've been working together, whether it's on a National Security Committee of parliamentarians that we created over the objections of the Conservative Party, whether it's through strengthened mechanisms within our national security universe, but also through election interference monitoring by top public servants. We have taken more actions on preventing foreign interference than any other government, and we've continued to work with independent commissions like the public inquiry to get to the bottom of it.
The Honourable Member for Burnaby South.
And not taking action.
For 3 months now, the Prime Minister has had information about allegations of parliamentarians knowingly helping India and China. The Prime Minister thinks he knows better than everyone, but he has failed to act. He's done nothing. And meanwhile, the Conservative leader is hiding because he does not want to know the truth. Why will neither of these leaders put Canada's best interests before their own best interests?
The
Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, last week, both the NDP leader and the Green Party leader obtained security clearance such that they were able to read the full, unredacted, classified NSICOP report. Then they were able to share their point of view. They had 2 different points of view, but they were able to read it and share that. But the Conservative leader has chosen to remain ignorant, in the dark. He does not want to obtain security clearance to read the classified information because he prefers to simply engage in partisan attacks. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
The Prime Minister divides to distract. He turns groups against each other. He fans the flames. He gave funds to an anti-Semitic Holocaust denier. And so even before October 7th, hate crimes were up 162%. And since, we've seen the rise of Hamas-inspired hate camps at university campuses that intimidate Jewish students and promote genocide. Will the Prime Minister finally summon the courage to join with me and call for these hate camps to be shut down and closed up so that students can safely go back to school?
The Honourable Minister of Justice and Attorney General.
I welcome the Leader of the Opposition recognizing the divisive rhetoric and the division that is occurring in Canadian society right now. We have a problem with hatred. We've got to address that problem with hatred. We know that the statistics show that hate crimes are on the rise 130% in the last 5 years. That's why I was proud to stand with CIJA when we tabled Bill C-63, the online harms legislation that would improve penalties for hate crimes, that would provide a definition of hatred, that would ensure that we are keeping Canadian communities safe. The Special Envoy in Anti-Semitism supports the bill. CIJA supports the bill. I'm just wondering why the Leader of the Opposition does not.
The Honourable Member from Thornhill.
About those hate camps, all while he allows 700 agents of the Iranian regime to openly operate in Canada 4 years after they killed 55 Canadians, 30 permanent residents, and funded the brutal massacres of October 7th. 6 years of excuses and they did nothing. But with the by-election on Monday and the Prime Minister desperately needing to pad his margins, it turns out that there might be enough pressure for them to finally ban the IRGC terrorists that they should have banned years ago before they set up shop here to terrorize our communities. Why does the Prime Minister always put himself ahead of the safety of Canadians?
The Honourable Minister of Public Security.
Mr. Speaker, our government has taken a series of measures to hold the murderous Iranian regime to account. We have consistently said and taken measures, whether it's under immigration legislation. We've listed the Revolutionary Guard Quds Force in terms of being a terrorist entity. Mr. Speaker, we take advice from national security agencies in terms of listings, and we think that honourable members should allow that process to take place. And when we have some news, we'll be making an announcement appropriately.
The Honourable Member for
Trudeau left already.
Chicoutimi-Lafiore. Mr. Speaker, there is a reason why people are saying that the Environment Minister should resign. Once again, he is going after forestry workers. Thousands of jobs are at stake in the Saguenay region. And yet, Quebec has the largest network of protected areas for woodland caribou. But the Environment Minister still wants to impose his order in council without considering the socioeconomic consequences. This minister, who lives in Montreal, never understands our regional issues. When will the Environment Minister stop punishing forestry workers who are just trying to do their job and earn a living?
I can't tell if Trudeau left or not.
The Honourable Environment and Climate Change Minister. Well, I would like to remind my colleague that I was born and grew up in the beautiful town of Latuc, in my colleague's riding, the Minister of Industry's riding. Now, my second point is that Quebec has committed since 2016 to publishing a caribou recovery plan. And there was a letter from the provincial and federal government in 2022. And in 2022, once again, Quebec promised to implement a caribou protection strategy and to protect 65% of that species' habitat. The Honourable Member for Chicoutimi-Lafiore. Mr. Speaker, how many times has the Environment Minister been to the Saguenay region to meet with representatives of the forestry industry? Once? Twice? No, 0 times. No times, because he doesn't seem to be able to travel outside of Quebec. The forestry industry is crucial in Quebec, but he doesn't even seem to understand that. He needs to stop going after the industry. He needs to decide not to impose his order in council. Thousands of jobs are at stake, and that means thousands of families are at stake too. Conservatives will always protect forestry workers' paychecks. Will the minister respect Quebec's jurisdiction once and for all, and will he leave forestry workers alone?
Yeah, it looks to me like Trudeau's left.
The Honourable Innovation Minister. Mr. Speaker, a little guy from Shawinigan or Latuc will not be taking lessons from the Conservatives when it comes to protecting our regions, Mr. Speaker. On this side of the House, we know how to protect both the economy and our environment. We've always invested in the forestry sector. We will always continue to invest in the forestry sector and industry. And for workers in that industry watching, tuning in from home, they should know that on this side of the House, we will do everything we can to defend them, to make Canada stronger and better, and to guarantee a great great future for future generations. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Honourable Member for Montmagny-Lilley, Kamouraska, Rivière-du-Loup. Mr. Speaker, 9 years of this Liberal government means 9 years of encroachment on Quebec's areas of jurisdiction. The Environment Minister wants to impose an emergency order in Council to restrict the work of forestry workers, and which would imperil thousands of jobs in this sector in Quebec. Only a Conservative government would protect forestry workers' jobs. With the help of the member for Avignon, Lamétis, Matane, Matapédia, will the Environment Minister stop infringing on Quebec's jurisdictions with his radical ideas? He and the Bloc Québécois member should stop this. The Honourable Innovation Minister. Mr. Speaker, we understand that forestry are part of Canada's DNA, very fabric, and the workers of the forestry industry are incredibly important. We're investing in the forestry industry. Not only are we doing that, but we're also looking into developing new technology because we want the forestry sector to continue to be prosperous in the 20th and the 21st century, and then beyond that. We are working with all sorts of partners, and those who are tuning in today can rest assured that we always protect the forestry industry and its workers. The Honourable Member for Montmagny-Lilley, Kamouraska, Rivière-du-Loup. Well, Mr. Speaker, after 9 years in power, this Liberal government still hasn't figured out its place. It persists in imposing its incompetence on the provinces. It wants to pass an emergency order in Council to protect the woodland caribou and completely encroach on the jurisdiction of the Quebec government, which is seeking to protect jobs, nature, and the economy. And just imagine, the Bloc helps them every time. Can the radical Minister of the Environment put his radical ideas aside, mind his own business, and let Quebec handle its affairs? The Honourable Innovation Minister. Yes, we have been in power for 9 years. And after 9 years, finally today, the Conservatives are waking up. It's Groundhog Day. Well, the beginning isn't today. We've been here. We'll continue to be there. We've been there for the forestry industry. We'll be there for them tomorrow. We are protecting the jobs of today and the jobs of the future. On this side of the House, we will continue to work hard, and we'll let the Conservatives chat and not do much, Mr. Speaker. The Honourable Member for Shefford. The program, Aging Well at Home, is a perfect example of the federal government's lack of compassion. Since 2022, the Quebec government has been asking for the money to be transferred to Quebec because this falls under Quebec's area of jurisdiction. Meanwhile, Ottawa has been trying to impose its conditions. Today, the federal government prefers to cut seniors' checks rather than reach an agreement with Quebec. The government's priority is clearly not helping people. This government's priority is to make all the decisions and then look good while being the ones to hand out checks with maple leaves on them. What is this government waiting for to transfer the money instead of just failing seniors? The Honourable Tourism Minister. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank my colleague. The program Aging Well at Home is a federal national program to help seniors age safely and with dignity. Mr. Speaker, our government invested $90 million in this program so that community organizations can put forward projects. Mr. Speaker, Quebec organizations and groups put forward projects through this program and this funding. We'll continue to work very hard with them to ensure that they receive funding. The Honourable Member for Shefford. Well, there's clearly a problem, though. This government has already created 2 classes of seniors. For 65 to 74-year-olds, the government will not enhance old age security. For those aged 75 and up, they're entitled to an increase of OAS. The Aging Well at Home program once again creates 2 classes of seniors, Quebec seniors and Canadian seniors. Seniors in Quebec will not receive any assistance from Ottawa under this program, which helps people age well at home and supports community organizations. Seniors in Canada, though, will receive assistance from Ottawa. What's the government waiting for to transfer the money? Why is it holding Quebec seniors hostage? The Honourable Tourism and Economic Development Minister. Mr. Speaker, community organizations have worked very hard to present projects through this national federal program. Seniors need these projects. Sometimes it's meal delivery, sometimes it's help with transportation and getting around. We are in solution mode. We're working with Quebec. We'll continue to work with them because we want to ensure that community organizations will receive the funding they need so that they can help seniors. There are no 2 categories of seniors. There's 1 category of seniors. There are just seniors, and this government is here for them. The Honourable Member for Thérèse de Blainville. Well, one of the best ways, Mr. Speaker, to address labor shortages is training. Training is the key to ensuring that we have a skilled workforce in all sectors of the economy. Everyone agrees about this. Workers, employers, the government, everyone's unanimous. Yet Ottawa is cutting transfers, leading to a windfall of $145 million. We know that the government is tired, but the government needs to wake up. Will the government reconsider its decision to cut transfers for labor force training? The Honourable Minister. As soon as we formed government, we began to invest significantly and heavily to train millions upon millions of Canadian workers from coast to coast to coast. Now, the program in question was not renewed in Budget 2024 because it was a temporary measure. We are here to work with provinces. We will continue to help them. Training is very important. Training is an area of shared jurisdiction. We are here for Canadian workers, all Canadian workers.
The honourable member from Foothills.
This Liberal NDP Prime Minister is robbing hardworking Canadians to pay for his out-of-control spending. The level of that thievery was exposed last week when the Liberals were forced to admit that their carbon tax scam robs our economy of $30 billion a year. And it picks the pockets of every single Canadian family of $2,000 a year. This Environment Minister is not worth the economic vandalism he has wrought on Canadians. Will he admit that his carbon tax is a scam and just resign?
Hear, hear.
The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, a deception was revealed last week.
It was.
The deception was the fake pose of the Conservatives to pretend to be on the side of working people. And last week we gave them a choice. We said they could be on the side of a nurse or a welder, a Canadian who lives from paycheck to paycheck, or they could side with a multimillionaire. It did not surprise anyone on this side of the House. The Conservatives yet again chose their rich lobbyist friends. Shame on them, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member from Foothills.
About the NDP Liberal carbon tax scam was exposed last week. Yep. And it confirms what every hardworking Canadian already knows. Yep. It makes life unaffordable. Right. The Liberals' own data, which they desperately tried to hide, shows the Liberal carbon tax scam robs Canadian families of $2,000 a year. This is money that they would put on dance fees, hockey registration, a summer vacation, or just to put food on the table. Right. The truth is, hardworking Canadians can't afford this Environment Minister's carbon tax scam. Will he admit it's a failure and just resign? Give Canadians a break.
The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, there really has been a scam that has been revealed. For weeks, for months, the Conservatives have been trying to distract and deceive. They have been trying to bamboozle Canadians. They have posed as being on the side of working people, on the side of people who live from paycheck to paycheck. But, Mr. Speaker, last week they showed their true colors, and they voted against the plumber and the nurse. Now Canadians know whose side they're really on.
The honourable member from Dauphin, Swan River, Neepawa.
Speaker, the Environment Minister has been caught covering up a damning secret from Canadians. After years of telling Canadians they'd be better off from the carbon tax, his own government's data has proved him wrong. The carbon tax will cost the Canadian economy $30 billion every year. That's nearly $2,000 per Canadian family. Now that we know the Environment Minister chose to vandalize the Canadian economy with his carbon tax, will he do the right thing and resign?
The Honourable Minister of the Environment and Climate Change.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The reality is that climate change is already costing Canadians $25 billion in the last 10 years alone. Not 5 years from now, not 10 years from now. It's already happening. And if we don't do anything, it's going to be an extra $35 billion to Canadian taxpayers. What we're doing on this side of the House is we're helping Canadians fight climate change, and we're helping Canadians with affordability, which is why 8 out of 10 Canadian families get more money back from carbon pricing than what they pay, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member from Coast of Bays Central, Notre Dame.
Mr. Speaker, this NDP Liberal Costly Coalition can no longer dispute the Parliamentary Budget Officer's finding that carbon tax will cost most Canadians more than they pay in. Their own report, which Conservatives forced them to release, shows that carbon tax will cost every single family in Canada $2,000 per year. Wow. And it'll cost the Canadian economy $30 billion per year. This is nothing short of economic vandalism. So after 9 years, will this Prime Minister finally do the right thing and fire his Environment Minister, or will he once again prove that he's not worth the cost?
The Honourable Minister of Labour.
Let's go through the numbers yet again, Mr. Speaker. For a family of four in Alberta, it's $1,800. For Manitoba, it's $1,200. For Ontario, it's $1,120. In Saskatchewan, it's $1,504. In New Brunswick, it is $760. In Nova Scotia, $824. In PEI, $880. In Newfoundland and Labrador, $1,192 a year. To most people, that's a lot of money. To these guys, it's phony. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member from Cowichan, Malahat, Langford.
People are increasingly turning to food banks in Halifax because of sky-high grocery prices, with food bank visits having risen by 21% since last year. Instead of tackling the corporate greed gouging these families, the Liberals gutted the NDP's bill to address price fixing and harmful mergers that are increasing prices for Canadians. Just like the Conservatives, they'd rather protect CEO profits over lowering prices for Canadians. Why did the Liberals choose corporate power and profits over the people of Nova Scotia?
The Honourable Minister for Innovation.
Mr. Speaker, I'd like to thank my colleague for the question. We did not even only chose the people of Nova Scotia. We chose all Canadians, Mr. Speaker, when we called all the CEOs of the grocery chain to come to explain themselves in this town in Ottawa, to answer to this government, to answer to Canadians. Mr. Speaker, we have introduced one of the most comprehensive reform on competition because we want more choice, less consolidation, and more competition. But if the NDP and Conservative want to do something, Mr. Speaker, they should call Walmart and Costco, like I'm doing, to ask them to sign the Grocery Code of Conduct so we bring fairness in this country for all grocers across the nation.
The honourable member from Skeena, Bulkley Valley.
Air Canada made $2 billion in profits last year, but apparently that's not enough because now Canadians are facing steep summer price hikes at a time when they can least afford it. WestJet is even charging people $25 just to book a ticket by phone, and these costs affect northern communities super hard because their flying is often the only option. The government's response has been crickets, whether it's grocery chains, oil and gas companies, or airlines. The Liberals seem perfectly fine with corporations gouging Canadians. Why is that?
The Honourable Minister of Transport.
Mr. Speaker, as my colleagues know, WestJet make their own business decision, but charging extras for customers who book flights over the phone makes absolutely no sense. On this side of the aisle, we're working with the Canadian Transportation Agency to increase transparency of fees to make life more affordable. And what are they doing, Mr. Speaker? They're voting against all of that.
Okay. The honourable member from Brampton South.
Speaker, June is National Indigenous History Month. It is time to reflect on the legacy and impacts of colonialism and work together towards a better future. This is a top of mind for the 12,000 First Nations and non-Indigenous residents who live in the Winnebago region in Northern Ontario. Can the Minister of Indigenous Services tell us what the government is doing to ensure everyone has a fair access to quality health care?
The Honourable Minister for Indigenous Services.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and I thank the member from Brampton South for her advocacy. She's right. For too long, Indigenous people have been facing discrimination as they access health care. But everyone in this country has the right to quality health care. In 2018, our government contributed $158 million to plan the replacement of the Winnebago Hospital in Northern Ontario. And just like I said in this House last month, we are going to get that health care centre built. The federal government government's contributing $1.2 billion, Mr. Speaker, so that all members in the Winnebago area region have equal access
Look at this
to
girl's
healthcare.
face in the bottom right. The one with the blonde hair. It always makes weird faces.
The honourable member from Calgary, Forest Lawn.
The $30 billion carbon tax cover-up has been exposed. This costly cover-up coalition hid a secret government report proving the carbon tax scam commits $30 billion of economic vandalism. The culprit of this cover-up is the Environment Minister, who has a profound love of orange jumpsuits and handcuffs. He did it to protect the leader of the NDP's pension. These champagne socialists are not worth the cover-up or costs. Why hasn't this Environment Minister been fired for misleading Canadians?
The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, the average income in Calgary Forest Lawn is $35,000 a year. The average person in Calgary Forest Lawn can only dream of having an income of more than $250,000 a year. But their MP thinks that the average person earning $35,000 in Calgary Forest Lawn should pay tax at a higher rate than a multi-millionaire making a profit of more than $250,000 a year. That is shameful, Mr. Speaker.
I know this is the fifth week in a row that the House is sitting, but I'm going to ask all members on all sides, please, to not use your voices unless you're recognized by the Speaker to ask a question or to answer. The honourable member from Calgary Forest Lawn.
Looks like she has a PhD in wackonomics. Facts are like common sense in this government and not so common. This proud socialist environment minister's woke, radical, extreme agenda sent 2 million Canadians into a food bank and 1 in 4 into poverty. His government hid a secret report that proves the carbon tax scam cost Canadians an extra $30 billion. If anyone in the private sector covered up a $30 billion loss from shareholders, they'd be fired. So how the hell does this guy still have a job?
Hear, hear.
The honourable member has to be this is a message for all honourable members. You have to be very careful about the language that you use in the House.
That was
the
parliamentary.
Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, let me share some economic analysis, and I quote, "Here we have a monstrous policy of transferring wealth from wage earners to asset holders, from the working class to the wealthy. Here we have a policy that is specifically designed to transfer wealth from those who earn wages to those who earn capital gains through their assets." Who said that? The current Conservative leader. He was railing against the holders of assets and claiming to support working people. But we learned last week that is fake populism.
Yeah, cut her off.
The honourable member from Caribou, Prince George.
After 9 years of this NDP Liberal government, Canada's on track for the worst living standards in 40 years. Now the Prime Minister's radical finance minister are hiking taxes on farmers to pay for their inflationary spending, all during a food crisis. A new report indicates that the Liberals' job-killing tax hike will cost average farmers 30% more in taxes. Canadians know that when you tax the farmer who grows the food, tax the trucker who ships the food, it's all Canadians who pay the price. How is that fair?
The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Finance.
Oh, not her again.
Mr. Speaker, as the proud daughter of a farmer, I know the huge contribution farmers make to our country. And that is why I am glad that with these tax measures, we are able to increase the lifetime capital gains exemption to $1.25 million for each farmer in Canada. I also know that farmers are hard-working people. They're on the side of the working people, not on the side of the multimillionaires. But that's not the side the Conservatives are on, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member from Caribou, Prince George.
More Canadians are struggling to feed their families. 25% of Canadians are living at poverty. They can spin this 100 different ways, Mr. Speaker, but Canadians know the truth. First, this government punished Canadians with a carbon tax. Now they're imposing a job-killing tax hike on the people who produce and provide the services we need to survive. Farmers, welders, plumbers, home builders, doctors, and small business owners will all be decimated by this hike. Will the minister commit to exempting any Canadian earning less than $120K a year from this job-killing tax hike?
Yeah, I like that. I like that amendment, actually.
The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, the Conservatives are showing that not only are they fake populists, they're populists who can't do math. We have been really clear that the new level of capital gains inclusion kicks in only after each individual has made $250,000 in capital gains, and you can do that every single year. That's the reality, Mr. Speaker, and the Conservatives are ashamed of themselves.
Order. Order.
The Honourable Member for Beauport-Limoilou. Yet another federal failure with the French language. Canada Post hired unilingual English-speaking letter carriers in Belleuil and Saint-Rémy. They claim it's not necessary to speak French to deliver mail. Let's remind them that in Quebec, French is a language of work. We won't accept Canada Post anglicizing the workplaces of all its Quebec employees. Further proof that the Charter of the French language should prevail. Knowledge of French in Quebec is essential. Will the minister immediately bring Canada Post back in line? The Honourable Minister of Public Services and Procurement. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I thank my colleague for giving me the opportunity to remind this House that all federal institutions, including Crown corporations, including Canada Post, must follow the Official Languages Act of the Government of Canada. And the good news is that this Act was strengthened in recent years. For the first time in the country's history, it recognizes, and the Government of Canada recognizes, that we must defend French all over Canada, but in particular in Quebec. That is the responsibility of all, and it's the responsibility of the Government of Canada, with a plan with billions of dollars to help communities throughout the country. The Honourable Member for La Pointe-de-l'Île. By hiring unilingual Anglophones, Canada Post is calling into question the right to work in French for all its Quebec employees. It's a test for the reform of the Official Languages Act. Remember, the Liberals and Quebec reached a compromise that doesn't require federal corporations to comply with the Charter of the French language. Canada Post is using this compromise to anglicize its workplaces. Does the minister realize that this proves that, once again, despite the reform, the Official Languages Act continues to foster the anglicization of Quebec? The Honourable Minister of Public Services and Procurement. On the contrary, Mr. Speaker, the new Official Languages Act, for the first time in the country's history, recognizes that French is in peril in Quebec, that it must be defended throughout the country, but in particular in Quebec. I've already answered this question by clearly indicating that all Crown corporations are subject to the same treatment. Since I have a few seconds left, thank you on behalf of all members to the most recent cohort of pages who will soon be leaving us for the extraordinary service they provided over the past year.
The Honourable Member from Charleswood, St. James, Assiniboia, Headingley.
Larry the plumber from Winnipeg told the Finance Committee this morning the Liberal change to the capital gains tax is not fair to his generation. He's not wealthy. He doesn't have a gold-plated public sector pension or a trust fund to fall back on like the Prime Minister.
Greg, come on.
I'm having trouble, colleagues.
See, if it's like a
Colleagues, I'm having
Conservative,
difficulty hearing the Honourable Member's question. I'm going to ask him to start from the top. The Honourable Member.
He's so partisan.
Larry Larry the plumber from Winnipeg told the Finance Committee this morning the Liberal change to the capital gains taxes not fair to his generation. He's not wealthy. He doesn't have a gold-plated public sector pension or a trust fund to fall back on like the Prime Minister. He worked hard to build a small plumbing company, to save for retirement for his family. And now the Prime Minister is pulling the rug out from his retirement plan, penalizing his hard work. Will the Prime Minister exempt plumbers like Larry from the capital gains increase, yes or no?
The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, these deflecting and deceiving Conservatives should be a little bit careful when it comes to talking about gold-plated public pensions. After all, their leader has worked his entire life for the government. He currently lives in government accommodation.
Colleagues, like I was having difficulty hearing the member from Charleswood, St. James, Assiniboine, Headingley. I'm having difficulty hearing the Deputy Prime Minister. I'm going to ask the Deputy Prime Minister to please respond again from the top, and I'm asking all members please to allow the Speaker to be able to hear the member.
Very happy to do so, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, these deflecting and deceiving Conservatives should be a little bit careful when it comes to talking about gold-plated public pensions. After all, they are led by someone who has worked his entire life for the government, someone who currently lives in government luxurious housing and has a government chef. Now, when it comes to working people, Mr. Speaker, we are on their side. They've just shown they're not.
That's right.
The Honourable Member for Charlesbourg-Haute-Saint-Charles. The Minister of the Environment, with the support of the Bloc, is poised to impose more radical policies on Quebec by imposing an order that will destroy the forestry industry in Saguenay-Lac-Saint-Jean. TVA Gaspésie reports that, according to the Bloc environment critic on the issue of caribou, Ottawa could get involved. Only the Conservative Party defends forest industry workers in Quebec. Can the Minister of the Environment let Quebec manage its land as it sees fit? The Honourable Minister of Immigration. I thank my colleague for his question. He knows well that we've always been there for the forestry industry. We will always be there for the forestry industry, Mr. Speaker. Forestry industry workers know that we have to protect the environment and the economy, and they also want to ensure they have jobs now and for generations to come. That is why, Mr. Speaker, we will continue to invest in innovation. We will continue to support the industry, and we will always be on the side of forestry workers in Quebec and throughout the country, Mr. Speaker. The Honourable Member for Beauce. Mr. Speaker, my question is for the Minister of Finance, who never thinks about or consults farmers. With the help of the Bloc Québécois, she has found a new way to harm our agricultural sector. This new capital gains tax increase will jeopardize the retirements and succession plans of our farm families. UPA President Martin Caron wrote a letter to her on June 6th, a heartfelt plea to denounce the situation. Will she make a commitment today that no farmer will lose his or her retirement because of this tax hike? The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Finance. Mr. Speaker, as the proud daughter of a farmer, I really want to assure my honourable colleague that I often speak to farmers and I respect their work so much. That is why I am proud to be able to share the news that on June 25th, we are increasing the lifetime exemption for $2.5 million. This is a big deal for farmers in Quebec and Canada. The Honourable Member for Saint-Léonard, Saint-Michel. Mr. Speaker, thousands of seniors, including those in my riding of Saint-Léonard, Saint-Michel, have already visited their dentist for treatment, demonstrating the importance of the Canadian Dental Care Program. Unfortunately, the opposition persists in opposing this program day after day. Can the Minister of Public Services and Procurement give us an update on the success of this program for Seniors of Saint-Léonard Saint-Michel. The Honourable Minister of Public Services and Procurement. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Leader of the Conservative Party is against the Canadian Dental Care Program, and he is fooling the seniors of the Quebec City area by saying on the radio that the program didn't exist. So don't sign up. Mr. Speaker, this is a disdain for the seniors of Quebec. The good news is it's not working. Out of the 2 million Canadians who've signed up, over a third are in Quebec. And the good news is that next week, all children from 0 to 18 and those with disabilities will be able to sign up for the new Canadian Dental Care Program.
The Honourable Member from Mission Mascouy, Fraser Canyon.
Congratulations, Mr. Speaker. For all the wrong reasons, Canada is now a world leader in high taxes. Ranked only behind Chile and Denmark, we now have the highest capital gains tax rate in the world. In the midst of a productivity crisis, how can the Minister of Small Business support a tax hike that will kill jobs and decimate our entrepreneurs?
The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, yet again, the Conservatives need to work just a little harder, not only on being less hypocritical about support for working Canadians, but just on getting their facts straight. After this move, the capital gains rate in Canada will be lower than the tax paid in California or in New York City. Furthermore, the meter, Canada's marginal effective tax rate, is the lowest in the G7, and anyone who read the budget would have seen that.
The Honourable Member from Carlton Trail, Eagle Creek.
After 9 years, this Prime Minister is not worth the cost. Sean, a 20-year veteran, planning to retire next year, is gutted that he will have to put that off, given this government's punitive policy on capital gains. It wasn't enough for this Prime Minister to leave veterans high and dry because they were asking for more than he could give. Now, despite Sean's decades of service and prudent planning for his retirement, the Prime Minister wants to take more. So my question is this: how is that fair?
The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, we have already established that the Conservatives are not on the side of working Canadians. They are not on the side of the nurse or the plumber or the soldier who is living from paycheck to paycheck. They're on the side of the multimillionaire who has already made $250,000 in capital gains profit in a given year. But in opposing this measure, they're also opposing dental care that will help 9 million Canadians, school food, 400,000 children, and our plan to build 4 million homes in Canada. Shame on them, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member from St. Margaret's, South Shore, St. Margaret's, rather.
The Environment Minister is already under fire for his $30 billion carbon tax cover-up. He was a lobbyist for Cycle Capital. Cycle Capital companies got more than $200 million from the Liberal Green Slush Fund. Wow. Now we learn he is still a big shareholder in Cycle Capital. And since becoming Environment Minister, Cycle Capital companies have gotten another $17 million from the Green Slush Fund. Liberal insiders getting rich on taxpayer money, a carbon tax cover-up, the Environment Minister profiting from the Green Slush Fund sleaze. When will Liberal corruption end?
Never. The Honourable Minister for Innovation.
For the question, you know what is profiting for all the work of this government and all the members in this House is record investment in green technologies in this country, Mr. Speaker. We rank #1 ahead of China for the battery ecosystem, Mr. Speaker, in this country, and have more.
Andy Cooper calling RCMP.
Out with your hands up.
Colleagues, we're almost almost there. We're almost there.
3 more sleeps.
A couple of more sleeps. The Honourable Minister of Innovation from his top, please.
Oh, Mr. Speaker, I have more to say for these sleepy Conservatives, Mr. Speaker. On this side of the House, we know what we're doing, Mr. Speaker. We have seen, thanks to the work of this government, the Minister of Finance, the Minister of Environment, all this bench, the Prime Minister, we have seen record investment in this country, Mr. Speaker. We rank first in the world for the battery ecosystem, ahead of China, Mr. Speaker. Windsor, St. Thomas, Bécancour, Mr. Speaker, Kingston. Canadians are winning. Canada's winning, and we'll fight for Canada every step of the way.
If I could ask all members, ministers, members, please. I am thinking about 3 more sleeps. The honourable member from Newmarket, Aurora.
Mr. Speaker, last month, eligible Canadians were able to begin receiving care under the Canadian Dental Care Plan. In my community of Newmarket, Aurora, and across Canada, many seniors who haven't been able to afford a dentist are now able to visit participating dental providers. Can the Minister of Health update this House on how many Canadians have already received care under the plan, and what the newest cohort about the newest cohort that can begin applying for the Canadian Dental Plan?
The Honourable Minister of Health.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I want to thank the member for Newmarket, Aurora, for his incredible advocacy, along with the parliamentarians in this House who are standing with vulnerable Canadians who need dental care. In just 6 weeks, Mr. Speaker, more than 200,000 seniors from coast to coast to coast were able to receive dental care. And to put that in practical terms, the call center got a call yesterday from an 87-year-old woman in tears because for the first time since she was 11 years old, somebody allowed her to get her mouth taken care of. We're going to make sure all 9 million Canadians everywhere in this country get the care they need, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member from London Fanshawe.
The Canadian Armed Forces have been saying for years that their grievance system is broken. Today's Ombudsman report confirmed this. On average, Canadian Armed Forces have to wait 1,000 days to get compensated when there's a mistake with their pay. People are frustrated, they're tired, and they're angry. Our men and women who bravely serve our country and keep Canadians safe deserve better. This government keeps failing our armed forces. Will the minister tell us the steps he will take to implement the Ombudsman's recommendations?
Hear, hear.
The Honourable Minister for National Defence.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. And, from COVID-19 to natural disasters, for their excellent work in Europe, our brave men and women of the Canadian Armed Forces have always been there for Canadians. It's our job to make sure that our forces and their families are well supported. And that is why, Mr. Speaker, I have accepted all of the Ombudsman's recommendations to transform and modernize our military grievance system. And as well, Mr. Speaker, we're making significant new investments to support those members. $100 million for childcare, nearly $300 million for a housing strategy, and nearly $500 million to digitize the healthcare records. Mr. Speaker, we and our government will always be there for the members of the Canadian Armed Forces.
The honourable member from North Island, Powell River.
Between 2010 and 2020, 191 Canadian military personnel died by suicide. And instead of addressing mental health challenges, Liberal and Conservative governments have cut funding, putting veterans at risk. The Burns Way is ready to provide more trained peer-to-peer support to our brave veterans, particularly for Indigenous and 2S LGBTQIA+ veterans. They deserve nothing less. So will the minister commit today to funding the Burns Way? Yes or no?
Yes or no?
The Honourable Minister for Veterans Affairs.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, first of all, I want to take a moment to thank the members of the Veterans Affairs Committee for their important study that they presented last week on women's veterans. We certainly recognize that a lot of work needs to be done, and I want to commend all the members who worked on this report. On the issue of mental health services as well, Mr. Speaker, 2 years ago, the Department of Veterans Affairs Canada ensured that when members of the Canadian Armed Forces or veterans are applying for mental health services, they can have access to those services immediately without any assessments. We want to make sure when veterans are applying for services that they will have the care that they need when they need it the most.
Bravo.
Thank you very much, Mr.
Bravo.
Speaker.
Excellent.
Colleagues, following discussions among representatives of all parties in the House, I understand that there is an agreement to observe a moment of silence in memory of Hardeep Singh Nijjar, assassinated in Surrey,
that's it for
British
today,
Columbia,
guys.
1 year ago today.
I've got some clips coming out on the channel again in like an hour. So
to rise.
We'll be live again tomorrow, same time.